Hey, everybody, and welcome back to our final talk of the day. I am going to double check in just here in a minute and make sure the people in Discord know that we're over here on YouTube, because that may not be known right now. They may be waiting for us to get in, especially since we have no viewers. All right, so this is Brian Grady and Marc Russo from Wake Tech and NC State, and we're going to be doing digital drawing do's and don'ts. Y'all go ahead and start. I'll go find the crowd.
All right, well, I'm just going to say hello, everyone. Welcome to our talk, Digital Do's and Don'ts. And what this talk is, it's actually a roundtable. And that means that we're not going to bombard you with a PowerPoint or PDF or anything like that. This is an interactive session. We're going to be drawing to prompts and discussing topics, somewhat podcast streamy-like. And you'll actually ask questions and you can give suggestions for prompts as well, and we will draw them as we chat. We do have a couple of things that we would like to touch on, so we'll be glad to do that. But of course, we're going to start by introducing ourselves. Marc, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Marc Russo. I am a associate professor of animation and interactive media at NC State. I primarily teach linear animation, but and all the sort of odds and ends that go behind that, like the storytelling and storyboarding, and then the animation production. Most of my students work in 2D, but I'm a CG animator. And that's where my sort of love is. I've worked in games also, and educational games, but drawing sort of transcends all of this. It's sort of the foundation. Before I liked games, before I liked animation, I love drawing and sequential art and comics. And so, hopefully that comes through today. I am working in Clip Studio Paint, which I'm fairly new to. So you can watch me stumble about as I try to figure things out. But I have kind of grown to love Clip Studio Paint for a number of reasons over Photoshop. I work back and forth between Clip Studio Paint and Procreate quite a bit now.
Awesome. Hi, guys. Well, I'm Ryan Grady. I am, as of starting July 1st, I'll be Assistant Professor Ryan Grady at Wake Technical Community College. I just got faculty rank, so yay. In simulation and game development. And I teach primarily some of the art classes there, like art for games, 3D modeling, and character development. So even though I'm kind of the opposite of Marc there, most of my students do 3D, and I teach mostly 3D classes, but my truest love is 2D art. And in my own practice, I'm primarily a 2D artist, illustrator, and concept artist. Some of the things I've worked on, I've actually worked on something called the Aspect Project back with Marc back in the day. I was the assistant designer for that. I also completed 2 externships recently with RTI International and Lucid Dream VR. And I've self-published 2 issues of my comic book series, Daughters of Atlas. I also want to mention, we were going to be 3 today, but Pat is not able to join us today. Pat Fitzgerald. Definitely give him a look up. He's a fantastic artist and professor over at NC State as well. So we're going to start off today drawing gestures, because gestures are the best way to get started and improve with your art. It's one of those classic drawing fundamentals. So we're going to get started with that today, and we'll start Marc, did you want to start off with your topics, or would you like me to start off with my little topics here?
Go ahead, you start us off, and as I get myself more organized. But yeah, go ahead.
So one of the biggest things that I wanted to discuss, and if anyone's wondering what brush I'm using here, I'm just using a nice happy HB brush, is concept art versus illustration. So many of us, when we start out in the studio and we're pursuing art for the very first time, half of young artists want to be character concept artists. And many of us are like, oh, you're one of those kids. I tend to call them DeviantArt kids, where they do a lot of OCs on DeviantArt and think that's concept art, and it's not. The difference between concept art versus illustration is that illustration is all about marketing. It's all about that final product. A lot of times it can take anywhere from 6 hours to 30 hours to create and be even a multi-week project for a big illustration. Concept art isn't about everything being finely rendered, finely polished, perfect, beautiful drawings. It's about the idea and being able to work in iterations. And that's the big thing that in your personal practice, whether it's drawing fundamentals or if you're trying to be a concept artist, maybe you're not even into drawing that much. Maybe you just want to get better at drawing so you can better execute sketches for environment art. You always want to work in iterations. When I teach, I make my students do thumbnails, and half the time they won't turn in thumbnails. But that is really where the process begins, is coming up with these little ideas. So don't underestimate the value of working in iterations. And if you want to be a concept artist, you need to have things in your portfolio that look like skin designs, right? If you're applying to Riot Games, you should have a whole bunch of different skin designs with different color studies and maybe different accessories, things like that in your portfolio. Same thing with Fortnite. You know, Fortnite has a skin-based economy as well. You know, if you're applying for a job like that, you're not going to want beautiful splash art in a majestic environment looking illustrations. You're going to want a whole bunch of skins with a whole bunch of color schemes and showing that you iterated on the same idea many, many times. And that's something that I've really been working on in my own practice, is trying to figure out how, because I consider myself an illustrator first. I'm really into the big storytelling, the big marketing illustrations, splash art kind of things, etc. And that's also where I can really combine my 3D practice, because 3D paint overs are huge in the industry right now. So that's really where my focus has been, but I'm still trying to get some character concepts in there too. So that's a lot of what I've been working on lately. And I'm going to ask, what questions do y'all have about illustration versus concept art and illustration versus concept art in your portfolios?
All right, so let me catch everybody up real quick, because we had a bunch of people over in the Discord and we've got everybody over here now, I believe. So what you're seeing is Ryan's drawing and Marc's drawing, and I'm behind the scenes flipping back and forth. So it's not animation, it's just me flipping the screens. If you have questions, this would be really weird animations because y'all's characters aren't even in the same, remotely the same positions. If you have questions throughout the thing, toss them out live. I'm going to post it. We're not waiting to the end. Just go ahead and toss those questions out there.
Because this is a roundtable. This is an interactive talk. So please ask us questions. Right now we're talking about illustration versus concept art. Also feel free to suggest prompts and things like that for us to draw. And you can even draw on your sketchbook. You can't share your screen, but you can draw on your sketchbook along with us. This is a group activity.
All right, so the question coming in from DeCarly, can we have both in our portfolio?
Absolutely, because some studios mix them a little bit. So, and I feel like I've talked about Riot Games 10 times today. I feel bad about it. But I mean, Riot,
how you talked about them.
It's all Riot is my favorite developer. So yeah, I'm always talking about them, usually positively, unless if I'm doing really bad at League of Legends. But But they want you to be able to do both. They want you to be illustrative and they want you to be able to do concept art. It's not that you shouldn't have both in your portfolio, it's that you should communicate that you understand the difference.
So Jessica wants to know, could they both be used to promote the project you're currently working on?
I think so, especially from a social media capacity, because your social media is your sketchbook, your portfolio is your portfolio. So in any kind of art that you're producing that can engage your audience on social media, include it. And Marc, I'm going to ask you, think about how many students we have coming in that want to be concept artists and don't really understand what that means. How do you address that in your classrooms?
Yeah, so I think that there's the draw toward wanting to be, sort of the concept artist, and sort of, what does that mean? It's kind of like wanting to be the character designer as well. And it means really, I think, first and foremost, that to understand the difference between, what is the difference between art and design. The stuff that you're making is disposable, and it needs to be ideas that you're not really that you're not connected to in any way. Like it's an idea for a moment, and then you've got to be able to move on and, throw out another idea. It also means that you need to be ready to not only come up with your own ideas, but listen fully to the ideas of others, and be ready to sort of bring those ideas to life, maybe in ways that they are not completely clear on. So it is really it's still a storytelling skill, but I think there is a lot less art in the concept art world, and a lot more design. And that's a hard one to sort of like swallow, I think, initially. It doesn't mean that you get to sit back and sort of like, just come up with these fantastical worlds. It really means a lot more listening, and trying to bring that stuff, bring other people's ideas to life, rather than just your own, concepts all the time.
Yeah.
So Jessica wants to know when it's appropriate to include illustrations and when is it more appropriate to include concepts?
It depends on the job application. So if you're applying to be a marketing artist or an illustrator, and they will specifically ask you in the job descriptions, are they looking what they are looking for? And if you're applying, it's more so you just want to make sure when you're applying for a concept art position, you have actual concept art into your folio and not just finished illustrations.
All right.
And
we got to follow on here. Lucas wants to know, where does animation or 3D art fall in relation to those?
well, those are different disciplines, right? I mean, I would say that that's kind of off topic. Because we can talk about animation and 3D art if you want, but referring to like specifically concept art versus illustration, those are just different disciplines. You would have a different portfolio for 3D art. You would have a different portfolio for animation. And I've said in all of my career sessions this week, make sure that when you land on your site, there's artwork immediately. But kind of building off of what Marc says, when you're a concept artist, or maybe you're applying for as a 3D artist as well, you want things that function. And that's one thing that a concept artist has to consider that an illustrator doesn't always have to consider. An illustrator wants to sell the product, so they're all about making it as beautiful as possible. And that's kind of why I consider myself a little bit more of an illustrator, because I'm all about selling the emotion. While a concept artist has to make sure that it makes sense in the game world and can function in the game world, similar to how a 3D artist has to make sure their meshes function in a game engine.
So do you have ideas for generating illustration ideas? Candle Lumen says, if I have an idea and references, I can usually draw something decent, but I have difficulty in coming up with ideas.
So I think yeah, so we want ideas. I think the first thing to do is to go on to, and go on to New York Times, find the first headline you can find, and do an illustration based on that, right? So you're really coming up with, you're not trying to dream up fantastical worlds, but you can put that fantastical world into this like editorial illustration. It really shows that you're sort of like, it gives you a concept. It's not something that you have to invent. You're sort of telling somebody else's story. And now you can just be as creative as you possibly can, within that realm. So there could be, other ways of sort of approaching it. But find some article that just got photography that's based on it, and then just read the headline and try to illustrate that. Those kind of things. Find an Aesop fable and do a single illustration that tells the Aesop fable story. Don't try to be the storyteller and the illustrator. You'll come up with your own ideas as you're going and make notes of those things. Like, oh, it would be cool if, but I think that, trying to come up with story and trying to come up, and refine your illustration skills or your drawing skills at exactly the same time, that's tough stuff. And not typically what we end up doing anyway.
Yeah.
I got a question before we get back to, the people's questions that matter. What are y'all using right now? Are those just Wacom tablets, or what are you actually drawing on?
So I'm using a Wacom Cintiq, and I would love to talk drawing technology, and maybe that can be our next topic, because that's one of my favorite topics.
Well, we got a load of questions to get through here first. That was, that was me, the non-artist, being curious here.
Let me tell you, I'm working on an Intuos 3 down. My monitor is up here. And this is how, and so I work primarily, I do illustrate on my iPad. But I mean, this is how I sort of work on my desktop. So you can work anyway. It doesn't,
I have an Etch-a-Sketch
work. Yeah, I mean, Etch-a-Sketch is good. It'll work. That'll keep you, keep you constrained.
This is a good question for, a lot of people in the industry, not just artists. Kat made that says, one of the things I'm interested in about is losing my passion in art and drawing by turning it into a job. Is this a concern you've shared? And if so, how did you address it?
Oh man, Marc, you go first, because I have a lot to say on that. And let's switch to Marc's screen while he's talking.
So wait, repeat that question again. I want to make sure that I understand the nuance of that one.
Well, I mean, there's a concern about losing their passion in art and drawing by turning it into a job.
Yeah, right. So I think, I mean, I will say that I've been doing this for how many years? A lot longer than I guess I'm willing to admit this at this point. And I have never more than 15. And I have never lost my passion for, for drawing and coming up with stories. But I think that you need to sort of have your own stuff going on at exactly the same time that you're doing stuff for other people as well. You can't just be like, you can't put all your stuff, because you're not going to get to express yourself in that work, right? All the time. You're going to express your skill. You're going to bring some of that stuff, to what you're, to the kind of projects that you're working on. But I think you need to sort of have your own thing going on, telling your own stories so that you can really be experimental and you can still, find that passion and keep that passion going. Just be ready to, if some place that you're working is, killing the life out of you, it's a good time to find something else.
What about you, Ryan?
So, I mean, I'm going to kind of dwell into like, not only how do you not lose passion, but also how do you know it's your career, right? Because I think that's really what you're asking here is, do I want to do my art as my career? And I have some unpopular opinions about that, but I'm just going to share with you. There's a difference between a hobbyist and a professional artist. And if you're drawing for fun, you can have fun at your job, but that doesn't mean that you're doing it for fun. When you wake up in the morning, you have to kind of decide, what do you want to do? What your mark on the world is going to be. And that mark is going to be challenged every single day of your life. When I started, drawing. I didn't draw it for fun. I just kind of did it because I had to do it. It was sudden. It was late in life. My parents were artists. It didn't make any sense. And I always have that feeling that I have to do it. I have to draw. And when I first went to art school, I wanted to be an animator and I wanted to draw comic books. And I went on a whirlwind. I was a fine artist. I did performance art, like I pushed 200 tennis balls down a hill. I did all this crazy stuff. I was a fibers major for a while. Somebody needed to pull me aside and say, no, you're not a fibers major, Ryan. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. But I was just so fascinated and curious because I could finally focus on creativity, and it was my life and it was my job and it was my career. And it took actually teaching all of you wonderful guys to come back and realize, yeah, I really want to be an illustrator. And more importantly, because this is the big question, I wasn't afraid of the work and the competition. Because it is the most competitive thing you can do to draw for a career. And it is the most trial thing. You'll have days where you're like feeling bad, where you can't draw anything. But when you sit down to dinner and all you can think about, I haven't drawn today. I need to draw today. Maybe I could draw this tomorrow. Wow, look at the highlights on those leaves of that tree right now while I'm outside having dinner. Then this is what you need to do for your job. If you're going to sit down and part of your meditation practices and to de-stress from the day is to draw and just be like, oh man, this is really fun, but you don't have I'm going to say desperation to draw each day, then maybe you should preserve that for your hobby. Is it a need or is it a hobby? That's what you have to ask yourself.
We work with a lot of comic book companies on this side. And let me tell you, if you think it's hard to make money in independent game development, try to get in and make money and make a living as an independent comic book, anything. But that is absolutely dead on for this entire industry. And that's one of the things that, especially all of you students should realize. It's like everybody gives all of us in this industry hell because all we do is play video games for a living. And that's not at all what we do.
I know.
I've tried to get out of this industry 2 or 3 times, and every time I do it, I go and I sit down and I have one job interview with somebody when they tell me, oh, you're in sales, so you're going to wear a suit and you're going to go do this, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm going back to games. You absolutely have to love it, but you have to be able to vary it up. And it's like, Marc said, you have to be able to do your own stuff at the same time you're doing the stuff you're getting paid for. It's that variety and that variation that's kept me doing this for 25 years. But, the same is true. This is an industry of love. And if you don't love it, you don't want to be here. Because all of us that you've seen speaking that are on this right now, we can all make more money doing something else. It's a matter of this is what we absolutely love doing. So that's very good advice. All right. So Sean says, I see you're both doing the wireframe poses here. Do you recommend doing a lot of these as a study on natural poses, or would you recommend completing the piece?
I think that's a matter of sort of like what you're trying to do, right? I would never show like all the stuff that I'm doing. I would never show to anybody other than all of you right now.
No, but Marc is deleting it like immediately, and I don't know if he's hiding them. I don't know what he's doing.
I'm just hiding. They're all here, but this is all stuff to just either to warm up or to just do, or then I'm, might take one of these and bring it to finished. But there's not really much concept behind what I'm doing. And so, I think that if I'm going to put something in a portfolio, I'm going to, spend a little time, coming up with, a series of thumbnails that I'm going to, decide are going to be the, and what's the concept behind that, and, a little more research. But this might be the first step to, having, doing some research. Am I looking for a character? Am I looking for a story that would then lead to that kind of stuff? I would, I mean, the best answer for like what should be in your portfolio, or if this kind of stuff should be in your portfolio, is, look at the portfolio of someone who you truly admire and look at what they put in their portfolio. And if you don't see that kind of stuff in their portfolio, it shouldn't be in yours. If you want to get a job at, say, we'll go with Ryan with, at Riot Games, I look at the portfolio of some people who are there, and then, decide that, okay, I want to, I want to work there. So what's my portfolio going to look like if I'm working there?
Hey, Ryan, Dylan wants to know if you can draw that character as a Crusader dude staring at a bottle. I think that was before you got to the pug. I don't think he's talking about the pug.
I would like to see the pug as a Crusader dude.
I can listen. What kind of hats do Crusaders wear?
Don't they wear like
Knights Templar? They got the Monty Python Black Knight hat on.
The Black Knight, sort of like, with big feathers on the sides, and a huge sort of,
a feather. I like a feather idea better. I like that. Like maybe a big cap, and it's nice and floppy.
Is that the like?
Wait, do we get to make requests?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna need a beer, and we're gonna do this for like hours. Right, so Crystal wants to know, how do you draw the line between making an environmental concept art versus an illustration? How much detail is necessary versus how much is overkill?
So I think that's one of the blurriest lines, is environment concept versus environment illustration. And the bottom line is polish. Is in a concept piece, you're going to see a lot of brush strokes. Another thing too, like this is its own topic in of itself, but don't be afraid to use photo textures in your work. It can really help push it in doing paint overs and things like that, but don't rely on it. But it's not cheating, because you have to understand art foundations for it to work. So if you don't understand art foundations, then if you use photo textures and things like that in concept art, it's going to look hinky, and you are going to use those a little bit more in concept art. I find that marketing illustrations are much more polished at the end. You look at League of Legends splash art, the character's very in focus, and you almost see no brush strokes except in the fingers, which I think is really interesting. Flip through every single splash art, I promise you'll see some brush strokes in all the hands. But in the background, there's tons of brush strokes. So it also depends on what the focus of the illustration is. The line is the illustration has a different purpose. And is often more polished. That's the line.
Is the pug Lulu?
Yes, the pug. No, actually, this is a little plushie that I have on the wall, because our prompt one of our prompts is things that are. So one of the things that are in my apartment is a pug plushie, and I actually have many of them. So
for 3D art, would it be a good idea to include concept art used for reference in the portfolio?
Oh, for 3D art. Marc, what do you think of that?
Oh, for you, so saying like 3D modeling, or maybe I don't understand the question. Like, so your reference, so for 3D art. So if you're referencing something and you're trying to bring it to like ultimate realism, I think having the reference of like where the reference came from is a good idea, especially if that's the place that you're trying to get to. If you're stylizing something, of course, then it doesn't really matter. But if you're going for realism, you want to show what the thing was and show how realistic you actually got it. Otherwise, you can do a lot of hand waving. It'd be like, oh yeah, it was exactly like it, or it looks pretty good. But then when you actually look at the thing, maybe it doesn't. All
right, we have our first drawing prompt, and sorry, students, Ryan and Mark can't necessarily see the chat, so you're going to have to play to what you think I want to see because I'm the one that's, reading the stuff off. So we need a tough dwarven warrior in a pretty princess dress.
Ooh. Ooh.
I love it.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Like League of Legends art to see if I can find brush strokes in people's fingers. So anyway.
Hold on. I'm like, so I secretly have my big reference folder up on my other screen right now. So I'm like trying to find a cool warrior pose.
Is there a dwarf warrior in a pretty princess dress?
Not a dwarf, but definitely
gotta
a
be
warrior.
Dwarven warrior.
Hold on. As I'm looking for that, maybe I think this would be a good time to kind of move the conversation to drawing practices because I feel like it's naturally going on there, and really a lot of like digital drawing techniques because I know we wanted to kind of talk about things like color mixing, and at some point we got to talk about drawing technologies because that's always one of my favorites.
All right, so this. And again, Ryan, you've got the total non-art person here moderating this chat.
I love it. I think it's great.
So, do you have any tips for getting used to drawing 2D and 3D art frequently? I'm a perfectionist, and it makes it difficult to practice any form of art.
Yeah, so the first thing to do is to drop the perfectionist thing.
So true.
And I don't say that sort of lightly. I mean, I say that like I heard I got a chance to listen to Dan Holland, who is a Pixar concept artist. He did the concept for Wall-E. He did concepts for Inside Out. He designed the train of thought in Inside Out. And his idea is that everything that you do is practice for the next thing. So don't worry about it being perfect. Do it and then do it again. Because if you're getting frozen because of the because of perfectionism, you're not taking chances. And I think that like one of the things about being digital, and working digital is that you can just experiment like crazy. Like, I've never used, whatever brush before. I've never tried, some other technique before. You just got to try it. And take advantage of the fact that you can be experimental. There's nothing precious here. No layer is precious. No, it's not like there's a limited amount of paint. There's not a limited amount of, of anything. So, it's a little bit dismissive to be like, drop the perfectionism. So sorry for that. But, yeah.
But it's so true.
Right. Yeah.
You got to. And it's, I probably do 5 to 20 sketches every time I start an illustration. And I just throw them away. Like I don't even save the layers. I just clear the layer out, or maybe I'll just put them in a folder. So I'm going to give a little bit of homework to you. I want you to draw something on a piece of paper, and I want you to spend at least 2 hours on it. And then I want you to go outside in a safe place with a bucket of water and set that thing on fire. We did this when I was in governor school. We made a piece of art and our teachers didn't tell us that we were going to end up burning them. So we all got attached and we had to burn the pieces. And it's a great way to be like, nothing is permanent. And one of the reasons that's so important, and I know this is one of Marc's favorite phrases, is you got to fail fast.
Yes.
Don't be afraid of failure.
That's life.
Yes. Like failure is being willing to fail is your biggest asset as an artist.
All right, we got an add-on to this to your dwarven warriors with a pretty princess. Jessica wants to see some characters trying to use small tools like a grappling hook.
Ooh, that's
small
a tough
tools.
one.
I am not totally randomly picking these out just to make life hard for y'all.
Yeah, I was trying to work out a good pose for my pretty princess. I like this idea of tools of grappling hooks, although I don't think of a grappling hook as a small tool.
I know. I think of it as a medium-sized tool.
Well, it can be a small grappling hook.
That's true. It's a very, Is there disappointment in the fact that it's a small grappling hook? That's what I feel like now. It's
Oh,
like,
I like that.
Because let's face it, any D&D campaign, everybody's got like about 80 pounds of crap shoved into a 20-pound backpack that they're theoretically toting through everywhere. So when you pull that grappling hook out, what your DM did not tell you was that it was
It's really
actually
tiny.
small enough to literally fit in that backpack. And so therefore it's very, very tiny.
here's a
Carly says,
grappling
can
hook.
concept art be sketched in a portfolio or should it be a little more refined?
A little more refined. Boom. That's the answer.
Good. All right.
Yeah, it's okay to have brushstrokes, but you don't want to be turning in like pencil sketches. Like, it needs to be full color. It needs to show clear understanding of the idea. But look at different concept arts from different companies. Like, things from Riot will be more polished. Team Fortress 2, he doesn't even do his digital. He does them in gouache, which is just mind-boggling to me.
But, all right, wait. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is that?
Gouache is like watercolor. You know, it's very light. It's a painting traditional media. But the thing is, watercolor is very transparent. Like, you can see right through it. Gouache can be pushed around like watercolor, but it's all opaque. So it's like super old-fashioned. It's like doing the things the way that a 1950s illustration artist would do for a newspaper. And I love that. I love that that's a possibility. But you'll find that they're still very, whether it's traditional or digital, they're still polished, but a little sketchy's allowed because you got to fail fast. I love that I haven't defined this dwarf's muscles in his calf or his toes or his feet, but I'm like, I really need a cast shadow under that knee right now.
So what don't you recommend when digital drawing, like specifics or tips?
Airbrush. Stay away from the airbrush unless if you're using selections. Because it looks foggy, it looks washed out, it just looks like a mess. It looks like you mixed all your colors together.
But what if your dwarven warrior went to Myrtle Beach and got one of those shirts that had his name and his little dwarven partner's name with a heart in it?
And is there a rainbow and a unicorn involved? Because then
exactly,
then and only then
you can use the airbrush because it has to be authentic.
And another pet peeve of mine, and Mark, I know you're going to want to bounce off of this one, is people just picking colors from the color picker.
Right. Yes.
It's this green.
Wait, hold on. All right, now I'm on your screen. Now I'm on you.
Nice job there, Ryan. That one's good.
I'm on Ryan.
Thanks. And my Cintiq wants to fall apart right when we switch to mine. And this blue. Please never use those in your art again.
Why not? It's a blue and a green.
They're too saturate, and they're like, we call it straight out of the tube. They have no depth. They are almost the same value if I make this black and white. Watch this. So this is a little bit darker, but they're almost the same value. So they don't actually pop.
So as the 5-year-old in the room, how do I pick colors on the color wheel that don't look nearly the same in black and white when they're not in black and white when I'm picking them? They're in the color wheel.
Ooh, well you mix them. You mix your colors.
Oh, see, now you're just making shit up, Ryan. That's just
Mark, how do you mix your colors?
Well, you can use a mixing brush, and this would be the downside of me being a...
Marc's character has a tiny grappling hook.
My character had a tiny grappling hook. I was working on this character here. Yeah, he needed some armor on him also. So I will say one thing before I talk about color also, because I'm at this point of this one where I'm making a total mess. Like, I work a lot like this where I don't actually know the line that I'm making, and I'm going to go back and sculpt that line out of here. So I'm like kind of working on this part of the hand, and you know, as this kind of third layer of that I've worked on for this particular thing now, you know, I would come back and start to use both the pencil and the eraser to kind of work out like where is the line that I want in all of this, and not sort of like just feel like I've got to make the perfect line. I know that there'll be another layer on top of here that I'm going to, you know, use, you know, to kind of to figure this out. You know, but I like to work. I mean, one thing that I love to do digitally that I don't do almost at all traditionally is work, you know, with the eraser almost as much as I work with the, you know, with the you know, the marking, whatever it is, like whether it be a pencil or a brush or something like that. So, yeah. So let's maybe talk about color too. Yeah. This is my tiny grappling hook.
So one of the things, I actually have my own set of color swatches that are specifically made from acrylic, based off of acrylic paint tubes. I'm going to actually drag that out here. So I made these for my class actually, and they're kind of my new geeky favorite thing. And these are what you would actually buy at a traditional paint set. So, and I actually went on Golden Acrylic's website and to see has this level of transparency. This is this color. So the only one that's off is my Phalos blue. But I have like lemon yellow, cadmium red, Nanthal red, alizarin crimson. And what's so great about this is they're not these electric colors straight from the color picker. They're colors that are already tried and tested by artists for thousands of years. And the way I mix color is I'll take a color, and let me grab an actual paintbrush instead of my pencil brush here. And I'm just going to say, I normally work in Procreate on my iPad. But if I'm not in Procreate, I'm in good old-fashioned Photoshop. Photoshop's the public restroom of art software. Everything goes through it eventually. So I still hang out in it.
Wouldn't GIMP be the public restroom since it's free?
GIMP is the outhouse. So, sorry not to give strong opinions today, but to give strong opinions. So I'll paint a color down, and you want to be willing to paint with opaque paint. Don't be afraid of opaque paint. And I'm going to hit 3 on my keyboard and reduce my opacity to 3, right? So then I'm going to paint a little bit on top of it. Hold down Alt or Option on a Mac to sample. Hit 0 to bring my opacity up to 100%. And boom. I have mixed my own color. And look how interesting. I actually made red from magenta and kind of a reddish orange color. So that was cool. And also, I want to show you how much more interesting that color is than if I go to my color picker. Swatches, go back and hang out in your spot. Come on, Swatch. There you go.
People that talk to their tools.
And I paint this super electric red straight from the upper right-hand corner of my Photoshop. This is something you would wear. This is not. Ask yourself with your colors, would I wear this today?
Judge me. Don't judge me.
Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, like if you were mixing color from from tubes, you would start with a base set of colors, and then you would mix from that, right? And so then everything would be from the same color space. So if this was my my yellow, blue, and red, here's my purple, orange, and green, right? So this is a everything in the same color space, as opposed to sort of like going to green and be like, well, which green? I'll take this green from over here, and this orange from over here, and I like this magenta from over here. And you end up with a kind of like a mishmash of a palette that you can't really work with. So, you can build these palettes for yourself and have something that sort of all works within a color space. The other thing to do is to work like Chris Ware, probably one of the most brilliant comic artists working today, and just keep it really simple. He works with, primary colors, mostly, work within, try to do an illustration, but work with like one color and, express that illustration with one color. And you try to work, in a limited way without, the great thing about digital is that all of this is available to you. The worst thing about digital is that all of this is available to you. It's sort of, and it's actually one of the reasons why I like Procreate. I'm in Clip Studio right now. Clip Studio so much because in Clip Studio Paint, like if I go to a pencil, like I can get to any pencil size I want, but what it puts at my fingertips are these very like discrete sizes. If I was illustrating on paper, I would only have like 4 pens, right? So I've got to figure out how to do what I want to do with 4 pens. And I think that, working digitally, you could, if you can kind of limit yourself to, I'm going to do an illustration today, all with, 3 sizes and 1 color. That's a good practice because really it's going to push your creativity as opposed to being able to wander about into these like this vast infinite space of choices, which is, I can't handle it. So,
and it keeps your artwork unified. I can tell you my biggest weakness as an artist is I love to throw everything in the kitchen sink into my work. And it's hard to know what to focus on.
So, Ryan, I'm giving you 5 points for your work on the Dwarven Princess in the pretty dress, but I am taking 3 points away because it is not wearing that bright red lipstick that you said I couldn't put anywhere. That's the that's the thing. So, Camardo wants to know, how well does 2D drawing skills translate into 3D sculpting?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that it translates, I think that it all works from a basis of, it all comes from that spot, right? Like, good 3D sculpting, comes from a good basis of drawing. But that's a tough one, right? I know lots of good sculptors who are not very good at drawing. So, I don't think it's a necessity, but I do think that, being able to mark well, have good, is one of those things that I think is just, it sort of translates into, all of the work that you would do. But in that case, I'm not sure that it's actually a necessity. I'd be lying if I said it was.
So how many portfolios do you both personally have for different jobs?
One thing you have to keep in mind is we have 20 little projects on the side, and we teach full time at our relative universities. So sometimes our portfolios will go through periods where it's like, oh, I was teaching 6 classes this semester and I didn't change my portfolio at all. I can tell you that I have 1 portfolio because my work is focused and right. I only need, I know what I'm employed now. I would love to do contract work over the summer. That in illustrations or 2D work, that's my portfolio. But I have other tabs too on my site for all my little side projects. Like I have my comic book tab. I'm on all the social medias and different outlets. So I'm on ArtStation, and as much as I detest DeviantArt, it's rising back up because they redid all of their stuff. So I might go have a presence on DeviantArt again. I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
MySpace?
No MySpace. My MySpace is gone.
But you had one. There we go. So how long do you keep a portfolio? I mean, at what point do you look at what you've got and go, I don't want that anymore?
I think that the sad thing about being a junior designer or being someone who's coming right out of school is that you do that really, really often. And that's really tough. You know, like I think you obsolete, if you're working hard, you're obsoleting your portfolio probably, you know, once every 6 months, once every year. And so all that good stuff that you had at one point that you're just holding on to, you know, because you liked it, is just not, you know, is not working anymore. As you progress, then, you know, you'll do that less and less. You know, you'll obsolete your portfolio. Some pieces will hang around, you know, quite a bit longer. You know, I guess that's a hard thing. I mean, I can remember obsoleting my portfolio, you know, over and over again and just being like, this stinks, because I always feel like I've got 6 pieces. You know, I never get beyond that point. Yeah.
Do y'all want a new art prompt?
Sure.
This creature comes from the past. It looks like a frog sculpted into the form of a camel.
Frog is a camel.
I'm so down to clown with this.
Frog.
I think,
As a
Anna, are you
camel.
cheating? I mean, do you have like what is the card game I can't even think of right now? The Cards Against Humanity? The type
I
game
know,
you
that's
play
what it sounds
out?
like. Which actually, that would be a fun drawing exercise, is to pull out Cards Against Humanity and draw the different cards.
One of the things that I thought of when y'all were talking about that earlier is when I remember when my son was just getting into reading and everything, we had story cubes, and they were
Yeah.
literally dice, and you roll them, and whatever 2 words come up, you had to make a sentence or whatever out of it. But it's like anything random like that.
Yeah, I love ink, what is it called? Inktober too. Like being able to have these drawing prompts and a new one every day, and that prevents things from not being precious as well. And you know, we're getting close on the end of our time here, so I really want to talk about different tablets, different softwares, things like that. And
Okay,
so,
to be fair, this is the last one today. We literally have as much time as we want to have.
well, you know, I've been hanging out with you two in the Discord like you, Jay. So eventually we all deserve to take a nap. But I do
All right, let's
want
talk tech. What do we want to talk about tech?
Yeah, let's talk tech. So, Marc, I'm going to ask you, what do you love about Clip Studio Paint over Procreate? And then I'm going to talk about why I love Procreate and the iPad in general. And we can move on to some other tablet stuff.
I think
No pressure, Ryan, but Marc is owning this this drawing prompt.
I have to minimize this window here so I can. Oh my gosh, I love him. I want a plushie of him. Oh, that's awesome.
And I don't think of myself as a creature person for today. I'm like totally into the creature stuff. Like, I think the one thing I like about Clip Studio Paint over Procreate, but I do love Procreate, so I don't want to bag on any of that stuff, is that it's the same app on my iPad as it is on my desktop. I have, right, so it is just like, if I'm on my desktop, I've got it there. If I'm on my my laptop, if I'm on my iPad, I've got it there, and it's exactly the same thing. And I really, really like that a lot. Procreate for me eventually goes through Photoshop all the time. And, in this case, I don't have to use Photoshop. I use Photoshop a lot less. And I try to do that as much as possible. Use that as little as I possibly can. That's the one thing I like about it. I do like that it's has a little bit more options than say Procreate does. I love the limited nature of Procreate though also. And I really like working there as well. So that's I think that's my my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
So I primarily use Procreate, and the reason I use Procreate is because it's so interface free. It's like you have 2 sliders, and there's no, like, you decide when you want to have the layer thing, and it's just a tap. And I'm one of the few people, like I hear all these people on their Ycoms, they don't use the buttons. I'm like, how can you use your tablet without using the buttons? That's just crazy to me. I need the buttons. And so like I need the buttons in my Ycom, I need the gestures in Procreate. Being able to just tap my finger to sample, especially since I'm constantly sampling and painting. That's awesome. I can't get this fill right. I'm trying to do these eyes and the camel's hump. And I think I'm going to trash this and do something different.
All right.
But
Anna fessed up. She did cheat. She pulled this from a random creature concept generator. So it's still awesome. All right. So Crystal says, I've been meaning to replace my old I don't know how to say that, GT 185 tablet and monitor for some time. And I'm looking for some recommendations for a new tablet and monitor. What do you suggest as a pro?
So I'm going to ask you the big, scary question. What's your budget?
I'm guessing Crystal is a student. There's that budget.
So I'm just going to go over my whole spiel. Ycom's king still, but the Cintiqs are so expensive. Now, recently, they have released the Cintiq Ycom 1, which is about, I think it's $600, which is their kind of entry-level drawing display. I'm drawing on a Ycom 16-inch, not the Pro, which actually I think the one is about $400 and this one's about $600. The 22 is $1,000. The 22 Pro is $2,000. The 32-inch Pro is $3,000. However,
wait, they have a budget of up to $1,000.
Okay. So if you have a budget up to $1,000, I would really look at the Cintiq 22-inch. Ask yourself if the buttons are important to you. They're important to me. Also, though, I'm really curious about the X Pen drawing display that's 22 inches. It has one cord. It has the same amount of sensitivity as a Cintiq, which is 8,132, maybe? It's 8,000 something.
Does it draw for me?
It does not draw for you. You have to hire an artist for that. But it does. One of the things I really like about X Pens over Huons is Huons have a lot of latency issues from what I've experienced. But the thing is, I haven't been able to really play with the the X Pens. But they're supposed to have very little latency. Like I heard that it's very comparable to a Ycom Cintiq, and everything I've seen reviews mimic that across the board. But just the 22-inch, the 16-inch apparently X Pen is not as good.
So here's the next challenge. With the next time Wake Tech or State or whoever does a game jam, the theme needs to be, it has to be based on what we are now calling Randall here on the camouflage.
Randall?
We're doing an entire game jam, but it has to involve this creature at some point. All right, so I'm looking at, there were other tech questions.
Yeah, I will say that I am working on I said like in the beginning, an Intuos 3 that I bought in 2005. So, you just gotta, and for me, like the crazy thing is like, I think about all the level pressures, the levels of pressure that are in a Cintiq, and I look at those and I'm like, I'm probably using about 100 of them.
Yeah,
so, there's no way I'm using like, whatever it is now, 8,000, and so, I think about like, do I want to do that, or would I rather, eat and, try out the X Pen, or maybe I'm going to just, buy one that's, not quite as expensive and buy more Legos or something like that, so
Mark, don't you dare delete this piece of art because chat is now attached to it. And I will go one step further and say, if you will send me that, I will post it in the Discord for everyone to enjoy tomorrow.
I will definitely. I will send that over to you. Yes, yeah.
Oh, I love this plan.
All right. So, how do you develop great hand control so the lines are drawn where I want them? That sounds like a question I would have.
Yeah,
that's a really good question.
That's a really good question. I don't like. I think you've got to be ready to just like kind of do it and do it and do it and do it. But I don't know that I have great hand control, and I think that's why I go back and do so much like kind of working with like I erase a lot, right? When I want a line that is like not the right line, I go back and I'm like, I want this line, but I don't quite have it. Well, I just come back with the eraser and I'm like, okay, well, I just gotta, like I'll make that line now. It's in there somewhere in this total mess that I made. And I'm sure that there are, artists everywhere screaming at the fact that like, this is the way that I work, but whatever, it's not for them. And we're not all Michelangelo and we don't have to be. So,
who is Carly's instructor?
Oh, that's me.
Hail her. She had the utmost perfect response to all of this. We're all attached to Randall. She says, burn it.
There you go.
So what was I thinking about? It was good. So if y'all guys look at my stuff, I do a lot of long, big Art Nouveau like strokes. So I have to have good hand control, and I don't always. First off, I'm extremely heavy-handed, which is the opposite of my art style, and it's been a problem my entire art career. But one of the things that I do to help keep a steady hand, one, you got to draw with your shoulder and your bicep. Don't draw with your wrist. Our wrists are slowly deteriorating from all the carpal tunnel we have anyway. But another thing that I do is I do other things that require me to keep a steady hand. Like I felt like I was losing the ability to draw strong, bold lines because I was working so much digitally and doing a lot of wrist work. So I took up calligraphy, and calligraphy helped me create those long, smooth strokes. Another thing you can do specifically in programs, there's this little thing called smoothing, and you can turn it up, and it makes your strokes nice and smooth. So that's the secret all your friends on Photoshop are doing. They're turning smoothing up.
Yeah, and I think that.
Go ahead, Marc.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, like, the idea of like working on doing something that requires you to have a steady hand, so you can take up calligraphy. It's funny, like I have a almost 5-year-old at home, and getting her to use a spoon and a fork is great for writing, for learning to write. It's also you finding the right tools as well, right? Like the right tool for what you're working on. So are you working on a glass screen? Putting something on that screen to slow it down, slow your pencil down. It's hard to work on these glass screens like on an iPad. I think that that's. I would never have thought to draw on glass with a piece of plastic, right? Yeah, I mean, it's like it's almost hateful in some ways. So putting some kind of screen protector on your screen to sort of slow down the stroke. There's a lot of technology behind like sort of what you're trying to do to make the experience of drawing better. I have found also that the tool that I use, the digital tool, which is a very strange thing, in the digital environment changes the nature by which I work. So when I'm working on my iPad with a piece of plastic on glass, I like to work with like the HB pencil because it reminds me of the plastic on glass. It's similar to that, right? So when I'm marking in HB pencil, those two things kind of like make me work better in some really strange way. So, but I love the idea of like, practicing calligraphy or just starting off with a blank canvas and saying like, okay, today I'm going to, I've got to start and I'm just going to, make lines. I'm going to make marks. I'm going to make long marks, make a box and try to fill that box with long straight marks, and see how can you do it. Don't be afraid to turn your tablet. It's a tablet. If it's an iPad, it's on your lap. Dear God, like turn that thing, and mark from different angles as opposed to trying to keep the thing, like in one place. A lot of just warm up exercises to get you going, and don't work small, work big. Get your shoulder involved, like what Ryan said also.
So Jessica wants to know what software you would recommend if we were to build Randall and use him in a game jam. One, we don't know that Randall is a boy.
That's true, right? Yeah, we don't.
So let's not jump to conclusions. But if we were to build Randall in a game jam, what software do we need?
I think we need, go ahead, Ryan, you go.
I was going to say, I think Marc and I are both going to say Maya.
Yeah.
Because I think Marc and I both are big on box modeling. Even though I am going to get more into sculpting this year because I want to include 3D sculpts in my illustrations. But I say that every day and I never do it. So we'll see.
I'm still a box modeler.
Marc, do you use the 3D models in Clip as reference or do you find your own?
I actually, use a lot more, I think, photography than I use anything else. I don't use the 3D models in Clip, though. It is pretty interesting, though. And I think that if I was doing stuff that was more, if I had to work fast and work on realism, I would be using them a lot. Absolutely. Anything to make me work a little bit faster.
So I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Jay.
No, I guarantee you what I was going to add was not constructive. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we have time for one more question. You think? And then maybe we can start thinking about, feeding our dogs and getting ready for the next day and the final day of ECGC.
Where Randall is now the official mascot now.
Well, Randall is now the official mascot. Yeah. See if you can sneak him on the website somewhere.
All right, hold on. I got to scroll back. We've had a whole lot of conversation about, Randall and all sorts of other things here in the meantime. So I got to scroll up and find us another good question here. If you have a question, just make my life easy. If we have a question and we haven't answered it yet, toss it in here right now. Even if I skipped it earlier. And Carly has been totally outed on the Discord server now. So just, for wanting to burn Randall.
Don't out our young artists, man. They can have their feelings.
I can, but up to the point that they want to burn Randall, and then it's just personal at that point,
Yeah, we can't be burning Randall. This is Randall's friend, Sally.
Oh, look at Sally.
Sally needs some eyelashes.
All right, hold on. Somebody wanted to know. This is one earlier. I can't find it because there has literally been ridiculous amounts of chat here. Found it. Is there any way we can download those realistic paintbrushes?
These that I have in here are all stock in Photoshop. There's brush, they say brushes don't make a better artist, but that's a little bit of BS. Having the right brushes does really matter. Making your own brushes is key. But these are just Kyle's Happy HB brush. And when I'm painting, I used a round that's has 50% hardness on it. I really recommend getting a square brush because that's what it makes you paint more opaque. and it gives you that really cool edge when you go. Whew. Unfortunately, I don't have a good brush, square brush on Photoshop right now. It's a problem I've been having lately. So that's something I have to go make myself. But these are all stock in Photoshop, and the stock brushes in Clip Studio. I don't use Clip Studio, but they're my favorite thing about Clip Studio when I was first trying it out. I loved their inking brushes specifically.
Yeah, I've been using like a single brush the whole time. I think I've been using this rough pencil, and then I was using a gouache a little bit there when I was doing the color mixing. But I mean, I think that the you should be able to work no matter kind of what the brush is, but that's a bunch of, like you gave me some of the Photoshop brushes. I wouldn't be able to do very much with them. So you got to find something that you jive with, that you feel like you work well with. And I think that's very particular to sort of everybody. Everyone's got their own, stuff that they work really well with.
So Breeze Lightning wants to know, should I focus on humans or how much non-human concepts and illustrations can I use in my portfolio? Humans or non-humans in the portfolio?
If you want to be a creature artist, you should have a ton of creatures. If you want to be a character designer, you should have a lot of figures. And the quickest way to improve is a regular figure drawing practice. A comment on that. How about you, Marc?
Yeah, I think it really depends on kind of, what you want to do. I don't think you need to have, I think you need to have a variety of stuff, but if you want to be a, a creature modeler or creature artist, then you just need to have a lot of that, I also think that it really depends on like kind of where you want to work, and you got to look at their stuff and kind of try to mimic what they do a bit, but also try to be, kind of creative in that realm. It's a, but early as a junior designer, you need to have kind of a little bit of everything, I think, but you got to lean into your strengths as well. So that's like the most non-answer that I possibly could give. Where I sort of give every side of the answer all at once. Yeah.
Yes, Anna, if you followed along with your own drawings, you can absolutely post them in Discord.
All right.
So this reminds me, going back to the comic book thing, this reminds me of, something that we always see at like the Charlotte Comic Book Convention and all these other ones, is when a bunch of the artists will get together after the convention at one of the hotel bars, and they will start drinking, and then they will just start doing drawings all together, and it becomes something like this. And I don't know, how do y'all usually do this as the last thing of the day at ECGC? Because quite frankly, this is the most fun I've had all day.
Well, so this was made possible because we were going digital, and we had a way that we could share multiple screens. So this is normally at ECGC, I give a talk that's like a thesis presentation, like a super researched PowerPoint that's over in an hour. And then I'm like, well, I worked really hard on that. And now it's over. And I just talked at people for an hour and I feel weird about it.
This is way more fun.
This is way more fun. So what I would like to do, this was the vibe that Marc and I wanted, was that, hey, we're going to draw together just like we would in our regular practice, but we're going to show cool things and answer questions while we do so. So maybe this is something that we can start doing every year.
Here's the fun thing about digital events. You don't have to wait a whole year.
That's true. That's true. All right. Yeah, at this point, I think we kind of need to wrap it up. I think, Marc, I bet it's your daughter's bedtime right about now.
Yep, I will. I'll forward my drawing off to you guys so you can do what you want with it.
And I'll go.
Official. Tom says Randall is the ECGC T-shirt for 2022.
I love it. And guys, I'll hang out a minute or so in the Discord to see if y'all have any questions in the post session. I won't run off and feed you Lulu yet. But after that, I'm going to run off and feed my sweet pug, Lulu. But
All right,
thank
do
you.
you want to do it in the, because there were some people that were, regretting that they couldn't actually voice ask questions. Do you want to do it in the stage where you can do voice, or do you want to do it in the chat?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Andromeda, just to make everybody be able to find it pretty easily, I would drop it in the art showcase.
Sure.
The art showcase, the picture art thing.
Oh, you're talking about Randall. Mark, just send Randall to me and I'll take care of it.
Cool. All right. I'll send it to you later. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. You have a good night, and the rest of you guys, I'll see you over in the Discord.
Thanks, Mark. All right, yeah,
Thank
we're going to move over to the career lounge stage in the Discord.
All right. I'll see you there on the other side. I can figure out how to uncomactically
leave studio.
yeah, leave studio. All right.